I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Bond Oversight Committee for Monday, June 17th. We've counted heads. We do have a quorum where we're missing a few people, but not surprised during the middle of the summer. Ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Newbold would lead us in an invocation. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would bow your heads, please. Father, we come together as people of the community, as people who are interested and very much involved in education of our young people. Help us to make good decisions as we come together each time. Help us to be aware of the issues that come before us. Continue to bless us, bless our chairman, and bless those that are here to help guide us. Asking all of this in your son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to skip introductions. I think everyone in here is pretty familiar with each other by this point in time. Ms. Allegra snuck in.
And we're quite
Hey,
into
Linda.
the tonight.
Come in.
Approval of the minutes. You should have it in your packet, and you also had copies ahead of time.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Moving, Mr. Holmes stepped out, I believe. Who was next? I guess we'll catch him in a minute. Next on our agenda is updates for Palatka A and Crescent City. Why don't we start with Palatka A and then we'll move into Crescent City since the GMP is right after that. Mr. Greg Kelly.
Good afternoon, Greg Kelly with CRA Architects, here to give you an update tonight. We were asked to start with Palatka, correct?
Yes.
Yep. So you know where we are with that one as far as the GMP's been approved. We're working steady right now. Contractors are moving along real well. Everything's going good there. We have the rezoning that we have to deal with in the next month or so, and we are on schedule with that, and the project's going forward. Is there any questions at this time? We've got the contractor and the architect here, so if we need to get in the weeds and ask more specific questions, we have them here tonight.
Mr. Chairman. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is the rezoning for Placket A?
There's still,
Oh, thank you.
the planning board approved it, still has to go to
Yeah,
the county.
little bit. Not
Yep.
Is that holding you up at all?
right now, no, sir. They're out working as hard as they can right now. And once we get that, we'll revise schedules if there's an impact or anything at that time.
And believe me, they're there before 7 a.m. I can attest.
Yeah.
Looking at neighbors.
That's your alarm.
Yeah, those dump trucks, when they dump that dirt and that tailgate
Plots.
hits.
You know they're there.
Yes.
It's a
Mr.
good
McLean, you had a
plot.
question?
Maybe this is an unfair question to you, but I'll ask it anyway, and maybe to go to the financial folks. Since our mission is to follow the dollars, any unforeseen financial impacts to the negative on this project?
Not yet. No, sir. Not yet to date.
That was encouraging.
That's an interesting answer.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Just a question on, and maybe we can do it either tool, but if you could clarify how the materials tax feedback process works, I'm sure that's all. And we can do it either school. They both have it.
Both.
I think there was, I don't know if it's in here, there was a document, is it in your GMP about the
Yeah, it's in
tax
there.
savings?
I'm glad to explain that process.
Yeah.
We can
It's
do
actually-
that.
yeah, just as an
it's
overall.
explicitly in the GMP, a change was made to the Placket A GMP to account for it.
Right.
So it'd be good for people to understand.
Okay. Any other questions about Palatka?
Yes, sir.
I've been to the site a couple times.
Mhm.
I did not ride with Todd. But,
Okay.
but I did. But everything appears, I did too. I looked at the general status of work. It appears everything appears to be normal. So that's your question there. But but also I'd spend some time understanding the project management system and how they're doing it locally and globally. It all seems to be standard.
All right, thank you for that
We
input,
didn't have
Tom.
any accidents, so exciting. How was it? Okay.
We thank you for doing that, because there's a lot of us that wouldn't understand some of the
Yeah,
stuff you looked at, I'm sure.
Me being one of them.
Good.
Anything else on that one?
Nope, do you want to move to?
I'll go to Crescent City if that's okay. Ajax is here tonight. We'll let them talk. I'll let him talk in a minute. We're the architects. I've got the civil engineer here, so we've got the full team here. If there's any specific questions tonight about that one, where we are with it, we had Thursday was a week ago. We had GMP presented to the board. The board tabled it until CM can come back, I guess, tomorrow night and have some conversation about what it would cost to lock in the subs and those types of things without completely committing to the entire number at this time till the rezoning's worked out there. So they're planning on coming back tomorrow night. That's kind of where we are with the number. I know that's not necessarily a good place for tonight. If the meeting would have been Wednesday night, as usual, we'd have had an answer for the meeting, but we don't. So right now, they're going forward. They've got their pricing. They'll share tomorrow. And as far as the schedule, once we get that, once we hear about the zoning, then we'll come back and present the entire schedule to you.
James,
Yeah, I'll let James come up and
and as he's coming up, I will, for our committee, this is actually one of the first times we're gonna see a monetary decision the school board's gonna make tomorrow. I printed it if you haven't seen it on the agenda for tomorrow, but it's something I think is worth discussing. James, I'm assuming, may bring it up. I'll let you go over the high level, please, of
Yeah.
the GMP itself.
Absolutely. So I will do that first. So, we have gone out the process. I think you guys are at least getting it, getting into it now. I mean, we reached out to well over 500 bidders. That's typically broken down like by the various construction divisions, 1 through 33, 32. And like I said, over that course, we reached out to 500, which is good. Put all of our detailed bid packages out there, and ultimately we're able to compile a GMP for this project. The cost for this particular project, for the Crescent City PK through 6, the GMP value came to 68,657,591. There's obviously very detailed GMP that I think some folks have printed out and looked at, and don't know specifically what you might want me to go over with you, but I'm glad I can go as deep into the weeds as you'd like, or stay as high level summary as you'd like. The task that Mr. Kelly was talking about was, the zoning and annexation is a bit of an unknown, although seems to be the general consensus that it's going to be fine. So the board tasked me with going and letting them know what potential costs they could be they could have if they agree to go ahead and approve the GMP, pending if the worst case were to happen and the annexation and zoning weren't to go through. And we've summarized that information and provided it, and we're going to present that tomorrow. The most important thing, and as a CM, we're trying to be good stewards of our owners' money. And so the most important thing at this juncture, would be in our mind, is to lock in the subcontractors because of the escalation rates that happen every month. So, you have to figure out where the most risk is, and that is the most risk. So that's the way we plan to advise the board tomorrow. I did hear that somebody wanted kind of clarification or maybe an overall summary of the ODP process. So,
DP.
owner direct purchase. Yeah. So I'll just quickly address that. So, like I was talking to Dr. Hunter earlier and kind of explained it. If I am tax exempt, and Dr. Hunter wanted to buy materials through my tax exemption. Let's say the materials were, $106 when they're taxed, right? So I would write a PO to whatever vendor A, for $100, and the $6 would be Dr. Hunter's savings. But so I think what folks might be getting confused on is the $100 that would be in the CM's contract, right? That would include the materials already. So the $100 we would give back to the district so that because their money is now, allocated elsewhere in that PO. You're not saving the $100, you're saving the $6. You're just allocating it somewhere else. So when you get it, so our plan with the district when we sat down and had our kickoff meeting was that we would plan to try to reconcile that monthly. And the reason for that is, these POs can get, big. Last project I was on, I think we were at $28 million in OD, owner direct purchases, a big project. And so if you don't reconcile it regularly, what you wind up with is you still have those dollars encumbered with the CM's contract and then encumbered at the POs. So you kind of have it, out there twice. So if we do a deductive change order to reduce the contract value, that balances it out. And so the plan is to do that monthly for us.
Yeah, the school board was confused on this topic. They assumed that line in the GMP, which is not an Osgood's contract, but it's an AJAC. They assumed that was savings on materials, and it may or may not work out. It's just the tax savings from buying the materials. From near as I can tell from looking at the Black Elementary contract, the county writes a check to the supplier, like SRM Concrete, to the supplier, and Osley deducts it then from the GMP and from the total cost.
Correct.
So it was just to try to explain that, because I noticed a lot of confusion. Yvette and I and Jackie were at the board meeting. We just noticed a lot of confusion about that.
And to allay any concerns, that's something that, we as CMs, I'm sure, I know Osley does this very similar process is, the subcontractor is responsible for signing those invoices to ensure that that material gets to the site. And then we, as a construction manager, also sign it. And so you guys don't pay it until that happens. So you're safe in that regard. And another further thing is that, the CM, we're still responsible for the material regardless of how it's purchased through the ODP process. So you're very safe, and it's just a service that you can save money on the tax.
Ashley, who did this spreadsheet?
That was,
See, I should have just assumed. So at the end, in your packet, there's a spreadsheet that compares the two schools, which I find very helpful. Now, James, I know you addressed this at the school board meeting. Can you
Yes.
tell us the difference in the price of the two schools?
Absolutely. So I believe Osley's was around 62.92. Ours is 68. So when I was telling Dr. Hunter, the first thing I would do if I saw that is be like, that's ridiculous. We got a 155 versus 154. It's very similar. Well, construction is notorious for, once you start digging into the details, there's a lot to it. So, for example, as I said, we kind of go through these through divisions. So if you look at this sheet, our project, I'll start with concrete. So concrete, you got site work here. Let's see. Go down to site work. Sorry.
you probably don't have the sheet he has.
Does he have one?
Yeah, I have it. So the site work, if you take that at face value and say, this one's 155, this is 154, why is the site work more? Makes perfect sense. If you do if you actually look deep, and we had I could show a graphic, but first of all, our site is 41 acres versus 16 at the other project. So, and that's one thing. What that amounts to when you really dig into it, it's about twice the amount of road base and asphalt. There's also a large run of off-site utilities along Huntington that the other project doesn't have. So it's essentially even outside of that 41-acre site. And then there's about twice the amount of sod and seed. A big part of the chunk of the cost is there's about twice the amount of storm waste and water and structures. So that's a lot of work. That's a lot of your site work right there.
Let's get draining the property.
Correct, and waste. But when you take it off, it's about twice the amount. So when you take these things into account, and and the extra work that's there that wouldn't be applicable or required for the other site, it starts to make a whole lot of sense. 5,000 approximately more linear feet of fence. That's just, that one's real easy to just pluck off and say, oh, well, that's part of the cost right there. So when you do that, it makes a lot of sense. The site work number to me is very easy to explain. And, I was like you guys, when I get done and I look and I compare, I'm like, why is that one high? I mean, I'm going to go through and look at those. And that's what we found when we really dug in. So it's very explainable.
One
As-
one item I think you brought up last week was the number of doors on the outside. for
So-
Crescent City, I thought was in.
Correct. So like if you look at the concrete and masonry numbers, the concrete, our number is actually less and the masonry is a little more. So it's concrete's about 550-ish less than the Palatka project, whereas the masonry is about 1.4 more. Okay, so at first glance, you're like, why is that? Okay, several reasons. One, the concrete, the way our project was designed, there was a lintel system that's cast in place for the lintels. In talking through with CRA, we all kind of decided, hey, why don't we price that as a precast lintel as well and see which one shakes out better, because it's not going to impact you in any bad way. It's true value engineering where you're not going to notice any difference in quality or strength. You're just going to realize it's savings. So we did that. So that was something that was taken. So our concrete number's less. We also have the big thing though is that there's a larger overall cost for this would be expected. There's about 30% more exterior doors than on the Palatka project. If you look at the footprints, you can kind of see this. Ours is kind of sprawling, theirs is a little more condensed. So that does kind of translate to a lot more wall area. So you can imagine, obviously, if there's 30% more exterior wall, there's going to be more cost in masonry. That translates throughout, folks. That's like, more doors, more windows, the whole deal all the way through. The other one that kind of stood out to me and I went through is the doors and windows. And like I said, there are significantly more exterior doors and windows on our project. The bullet resistant glazing at the west elevation is a different scope than, at the other project. So we have, more of that type of thing. The way our project is designed, the cafetorium requires the hardening for the hurricane, the level E hardening, whereas I believe the cafetorium at the other site project is interior. Is that correct? Anyway, so when you factor all these things together, that division also makes a lot of sense. And I'm only mentioning ones that are over. There are quite a few that are under the other project, and some of them just kind of offset. The one that the outlier for me, the one that is, we looked at closely, and it still makes sense, is the plumbing. The plumbing significantly more. So we dug into that. If you look at the fire protection is about $275,000 less, and that's just a scoping thing. Ausley decided to scope the fire, the tank, I believe, to the fire protection guys. That's right, Todd, right? Yeah, and we did it to the plumbers. So the numbers offset, right? It doesn't matter really much to you guys who does it. So it's just a scoping thing. And then the rest is, quite a bit of a difference. So we do have about 111 additional toilets and some additional sinks, and the layout's a little different on the building. But does that account for the gap? If I were being honest, I'm going to say no. I would say it's still a high number. And to be honest, the big reason for that is, during this process, I reached out to, I think, 60 electricians, 40 plus plumbers. And, a lot of the issue is that specifically with the plumbers, we're having a lot of trouble getting plumbing bids. So, we wound up with a very small pool of bidders for the plumbers. And part of that's, location, part of it's folks being busy, those types of things. We got pretty good coverage on most divisions, but plumbing was particularly bad, which is a little bit of a recipe for a high number. So that is the one number that, certainly can't be explained necessarily by, sticks and bricks, if you will.
Did you say 111 more toilets?
Yes, that's what we counted up. There's a bathroom in every classroom at our.
Order in Crescent City or?
There's a bathroom. Oh, it's total. Sorry, it's total.
Okay.
Sorry, I meant. Yeah,
It's still a lot.
My bad. But there's bathrooms in every classroom at this. It's just a different way of designing, different way of. It's nothing wrong with one or the other. It's
Right,
just
I was
it's just yeah.
like a-
Yeah.
So that-
So what are
Yes,
the
ma'am.
specials? Like it says special, like
Specialties. So that would be things like when you think about that, you can think about things like fire extinguisher cabinets. You can think about blank. I know exactly what's in specialties. What? Well, we have it in Division 11, I believe. But yeah, fire extinguisher cabinets, any kind of wall coverings or corner guards, those types of things.
So there's a specialties and then there's a special. So y'all were under Palaca A with the specialties, but then you have $46,243 in special and Palaca A doesn't. So what is
Understood.
that?
Yeah, so absolutely. So ours is called special construction, and this is one of those things where different design teams put different things in different specifications. This is just that number right there is for the walkway canopies. It's walkway pieces, right? Isn't it the walkway? Yeah, it's the walkway canopies, the overhead canopies.
okay.
That's all that is. So Osley's team has it in a different division.
No, what did he say it's for? I didn't know.
It's the aluminum walkway canopies.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So, and the reason why this stands out, and smart, like that stands out, it's just that theirs is in a different, it's shown in a different division in their GMP. That's all it is. It's that goes back to that scoping. So like if you and I sat down, for example, and we were like, hey, which subcontractor are we going to make responsible for which? You might make one decision, I might make another. That's all that is. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Hunter had his hand
I
up.
was just gonna make a comment. I wouldn't worry too much about the details of this because the two GMPs are quite different. They're only about half or 60% of the categories that directly relate. For some reason, the school board didn't require a common format. Osley used an American Institute of Architects format, I think, and this is a different format. So you have to really work to get everything in the same category. I tried to get in the same category.
Well, I still thank you for this because
They're
they're,
they're not exactly
Thank
that.
you.
They're very crude.
Mr. Sousa.
What's the difference in the two fee categories?
That's the one that matters.
So fee is a calculation based on we're both I don't know exactly what Osley's fee is, but we're contractually obligated, we're contractually held to a fee. I think ours is 4.25 or 7.5.
The fee part is exactly the same on both percent-wise.
Right.
The difference is,
Total cost.
they included something called overhead in theirs, which Osley didn't do it. So that was one of my questions. What is that overhead?
Ours is literally like there's no trick to it at all. It's literally based on the size of the project times the contractual rate, and I believe it's 4.75%. That's all.
Yours is not. Yours has a category called fee plus overhead. Your label is fee plus overhead.
It's-
Ours is simply fee.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
That's why it's higher, because there's some kind of overhead added to this.
Well,
in Ajax.
it's not quite accurate. So if you look at the I'm just gonna do the math real quick.
The math won't work. 4.75 won't work. There's 10% difference in the cost of the project. So it should be only 10% difference in cost of the fees.
1,219 divided by 68, 657, 591. Yeah, so it's 4.7 or it's 4.74% is the fee we have, which our contractual is 4.75.
And also the Plaque A is 4.35.
There you go. So I don't know. I'm not privy to their fee.
If the contracts are different,
I
if I can answer that without looking at them.
4.75 both ways.
We've locked Osley in with discount.
Discount. Greg's discount.
So I mean, it's just it really is just a calculation based on the overall value. There's no trick to it or anything like that.
You label yours overhead plus fees.
Yeah, it's just the way the software labels it. It probably should not be labeled that way. It's just fee. However the contract defines it is how it should be written. You're right, Dr. Hunter.
Any more questions on the GMP itself?
Well, I just sitting here listening, and usually when a gator talks, I have questions that I have.
Call his wife, she'll tell you.
You told me before.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Oh, we're both on the same boat, Dr. Hunter, because I have 2 degrees from there.
No.
So, Dr. Hunter said that he made an observation that if it's the same fee and you have a 10% difference in the project, or maybe a 10% difference in the fee, that I understand basic logic. That makes sense to me too. Is that not the case?
I mean, I could quickly do. I mean, their fee, I believe, is 2628877. Does that sound right?
Yep.
So, I mean,
I did the math. Theirs is 4.35.
so theirs is less. Their fee is less. I don't know why. I can't explain that.
Well, so we had a GMP previous to
Ah.
that, and part of it was applied.
There you go.
Ah, it went to the
Right, they're-
construction,
demolition.
I mean, destruction.
Demolition.
Demolition.
Phase one.
It,
Those two together should be 4.7.
this is one of the beauties of construction management at risk is it's so transparent. It's the percentage that's in the contract. Period. That's it.
Transparency.
And sometimes we call it OH&P, historically overhead and profit, but it's the same.
It's the same.
fee.
It's all semantics.
It's fee.
That was one of the questions. I was concerned that they were loading the labor back in with the fee. They're not. They're just doing the percentage. That was really one of my questions. I didn't know why they labeled it that.
Right.
Because, we had questions before about when you apply the overhead.
Yeah.
And got that straightened out, so. Yes, sir. I had a number of questions, but it's up to the chairman.
You have more.
Yeah, well, there's one that you brought up. I think it's the central one for this school. And I would like to know who makes the decisions on the zoning in Crescent City?
So let's
What organization makes that decision?
let's go to your other questions. I
Okay.
want to bring that up at the.
Yeah, you brought it up.
Yeah.
Okay, one question was, there's you and Usha dealt differently with the contingencies. And so there was a question about, how do you decide who decides how much contingency is to be spent and what's the process? I think we talked to know how it works. I think it might be good to explain to people how that works, because there is a contingency in both, the amounts are slightly different. And remember, they're generally supposed to be for unforeseen things that come up that you have to deal with. So you might explain how that's done.
Absolutely, glad to. So contingency is pretty standard in a construction management GMP, and it's also defined in the contract agreement. And typically, there's definitions in the agreement as to kind of what, or at least guidelines as to what you can use it for. But when it comes down to brass tacks, it's Thomas's office and our team. If there is a condition or issue that comes up, we don't just spend the contingency. We do a document. Our document's called a CCR. It's called a contingency change request. So the document would, be like, hey, here is this unforeseen thing that we think that it's appropriate to use contingency for. And we would send that in, and it would go to Greg's team. It would go to Thomas's team. And we would, say, okay, well, yeah, that's definitely a good use of contingency, or no, that's not a use of contingency. Now, yes.
And I promised I wasn't going to say a whole lot, we have a room full of experts, but Todd Duffy and I just had a conversation out in the hall about contingency.
Uh-huh.
And it was about the fact that you have ballistic proof glass on
Correct.
the front cover of the building.
Yes, sir.
Part of the building that acts as one of the hardening portions of the building.
Yes, sir.
And it's not in their GMP, so there was an oversight just in the planning, or maybe it was a later add-on with you, so it kind of missed them.
Sure.
But we talked about, do we pick that up with contingency, or do we have to find another one? So
Gotcha.
it's perfect with that.
Right. And even if so when it really comes down to it, even the strictest definitions in contract, much of contingency is typically used for additional scope. In other words, it's to the owner's benefit. I think Osley team would agree with me on that. So, go
To
ahead.
use a crazy example, if you came in and said, our bid, we forgot to add a roof on one building, That's not a contingency, that's gonna be on you.
Well, it's going to depend on a lot of factors. I mean, if you
Agreed,
if,
but-
if you you know if there is a scope miss or something like that, you talk through maybe this detail wasn't quite this, or you talk through it as a team. That's really the answer. I mean, it's hard for me to answer that question like right off the bat and just say it. I mean, the subcontractor was super clear on bid day and there was no way he can get around it, then he's going to eat it. I mean, that's just the way it is. But, typically teams work together in harmony to determine together how that contingency should be used best for the project. And that's the way we like to approach it. I mean,
And the architect both have to sign off.
that's right.
Right.
That's right.
I guess that's the next point, yeah. It doesn't get used unless everybody agrees.
That's right.
But you have a special contingency, which I didn't understand, which is the $92,000 for escalation allowance?
Yeah, and it's
That's not an office. How does that work?
no, it's a good point for you to bring up. So what we had been doing during the COVID pandemic, we were having quite a bit of challenges with some of the subcontractors bidding work, because they would say, well, we bid and then we have this problem and we go back to you and you've locked it in and I can't get any money and I lose money. So you wind up with a smaller bidding pool, which ultimately winds up being higher bids for owners, right? So we started putting some information in our bid forms that allows them to take a guess at what they think might escalate. And what that does is it says, okay, Mr. Concrete Guy, what do you think might escalate? 99% of these subcontractors said nothing. So not in there. I think 2 or 3 of them put some dollar values in there. And so we carried it as an allowance. It's in all likelihood not going to be used, but it won't increase. It won't increase, and it'll likely be used for the project itself. So sir?
It's unique to your contract.
Correct. Yes, it's not in. I don't believe it's in the Ausley GMP, and I understand questioning it. I would caution against taking it out simply because we could take it out, but like I said, the whole benefit to it was to give the subcontractors at the bidding time a little bit better warm and fuzzy, knowing that most of them are not going to have an escalation. It's $92,000 and it's likely for the project. So I think it's well worth it for, gathering additional bidders and having them, come to the table and getting a better pool. And again, this isn't money I keep. It goes back.
But you also don't decide it yourself?
The escalation?
It's a joint decision again?
That is correct.
The owner gets to.
And that's going to go for just about everything. I mean, we're not going to just say, "Oh, there's $92,000. That's ours." No, sir. We would not do that. And it's very unlikely that I'm going to approve it through a subcontractor either. They have to get through us first. It's just, to me, again, a good way to get subcontractors. Some bidders won't bid. They're like, I can't do it because I don't know how this market's going. So that was one of our solutions to get additional bidders.
Is it typically your smaller projects that have that, or smaller contractors maybe?
It's not necessarily. It's just there was a point there, and still continues to be with some sectors, where it changes so quickly that subcontractors that we have long-standing relationships with, they'll say, well, I either have to just include this in my bid, so it's going to be, so if they include it in their bid, right? Let's say that these guys included this $92,000 in their bid. Well, then you would be paying the 68657 GMP, and you'd be paying that $92,000 regardless, because they'd include it because they don't want the risk. In this case, we have it set aside. We're only gonna have to pay for that to the subs, and it's only like 3 subs, Bill. Do you remember? It's 3 subs, I think, that put a number in there. And we're only going to have to pay them that if they can absolutely 100% prove it. They have to show it. So you're not just automatically paying these escalation fees that the bidders build into their bids. So we feel like it's a good way to potentially save money overall. I know it's in there right now, but that's
It's also almost always material. So
correct.
Stuff that they can't control. So like the steel mill might come back to our steel subcontractor and say, hey, steel per ton went up $500, and then the steel contractor calls us and says.
And if they include it in the original bid, there's also risk they don't get chosen.
That's right. There's risks they don't get chosen. There's also, they have to, like I said, we were finding that bids were getting higher, less bidders. Bids were getting higher because they were including that risk. So we wanted to take control of it. That was one of the reasons.
You could have just added to the general contingency and called it good and when they have the conversation.
We could have. Transparency, Dr. Hunter, transparency.
I had a couple questions, just one comment. To me, I'm very interested in the concept of who reviews what and what does the school district rely on for judgment, independent judgment. And I like to see the architect of record stated in the GMP. I couldn't find it in yours anywhere.
Huh.
Well, I know it is, but that's an official part of a contract.
It is.
It says they are the third party inspection. Is it in there somewhere?
Yes, sir. It's in there.
Usually it's nice to see some architect of record put their name there. But they become the owner's agent with respect to review under the contract. That's just a comment.
Could that be in a previous contract that's already been signed?
It's probably in your.
Well, it's definitely in the general conditions contract. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
But in the GM,
It's just
May
an
not be in the
observation.
minutes.
Gotcha.
in the GMP, so just how you guys were, like you said, the original contract includes us, the owner, and the architect.
It would come out.
Yeah, and then the GMP does reference the architect as far as like saying, this is based on documents as provided by CRA architects, and it explains which documents that it's based upon. And then when we do an amendment to include the GMP, this GMP value or whatever GMP, when we do the amendment, all three entities would also be listed.
After looking at this quite a bit, I finally used a general model to see if how in line the GMPs are. These are cost plus fee contracts. So if you just look at the cost that's done by the market, that's all the subcontractors. Typically, that's about 90%. Wouldn't you say about 90% of what's here? And you're subject to the market, whatever that is. Now, the general contractor, the construction manager can twist their arms and do all kinds of stuff and get the bids down. But in general, you're stuck with the market. So that you can almost set that aside. Then you go back to what's called general conditions, and that's what you asked, Courtney, is how do those compare? And that's about the only differences you can evaluate. Is look at those two big factors and see. Based on that, then just, I think maybe we had a discussion, but in every category, you had a lot of, but certainly more than 2 subs and bids.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said you did.
Yeah. Yes, we had. That is correct. That is right. Yes.
The market is what the market is. It can change back and forth. And then would you mention about local usage?
Yes, I'll be glad to. So we just to give you a quick idea, we contacted 20 bidders for concrete. We got 3 bids. We contacted 59 electricians. We wound up with 2 bids there. So, you can see that a lot of work went into trying to make sure that we got it to a large pool of bidders. And I started answering the question, and I can't remember if there was a second part, Dr. Hunter.
Or just local usage?
Oh, yes. So we did wind up with Lohman Fence, who is local. We also engaged Palatka Welding, who was wound up not being low. We are engaging local services for some of our general condition costs, like a Dire Need, I believe, is one of the companies. And, we really put a lot into it, and Travis Woods helped us a lot as well. I think we've done a good effort there. Some of the trades packages are just, and I think Mr. Osley explained this at one of the board meetings, but some of the local folks are not, they might not be able to handle a $5 or $6 million electrical package or $10 million electrical package. So it didn't lend itself well there. But I think that with the local folks that we were able to hire, and also the folks that we're able to hire through the general conditions costs that you don't see as each bid package there, coupled with, advertisement that the job's going on and literally people coming in and saying, hey, I do drywall, can I get a job? And us literally bringing the subcontractor that does drywall and say, hey, we got a guy here who's interested in working. And that happens on projects that aren't advertised locally all the time. So if you can advertise it, that's another way that we can get local folks. Also, our subcontractors, we can't make them, but we have encouraged each one, like site work guys, they need dirt haulers, right? I think you guys are doing that. So that's another way that we can help ensure some local participation. Yes, ma'am.
Can you just explain, please, the difference between site work and site work improvements?
Yeah, sure. So it's just and it depends on how it's specified, but typically when you're talking about site work, you're talking about like earthwork, utilities like storm and wastewater, things like that. And then when you're talking about site improvements, think things like fences, think what's another example, Bill? Maybe benches, those types of things. Yeah, sports equipment. It really depends on how it's spec, but those are kind of the way that's kind of roughly how it works. Yeah, landscaping and irrigation's an improvement. Yeah.
Won't those subcontractors have to get bonded?
Yes.
So it would be hard for some of these local electricians or plumbers to
Yes,
get
ma'am.
a $5 million bond.
Very good point.
I do like the idea of them hiring people, not off the streets, the wrong word, but people that live in Crescent City. And
Yes.
there's some that aren't going to want to drive to Crescent City that may work for these folks. And
That's right.
hire 'em on.
Just to comment on that question, but if you go to Placa A, they're hauling in half of the county.
You don't have to tell me.
But it's all coming, I think it's local carriers, and I know it's local dirt, because it comes from where I live. But you raise a good point, though. This is just a general kind of yes or no. There's a lot of bond, you get bonds, they get bonds. Are we over bonded, or is the bonding about right on both of these? I mean, they're not bonding here when we could have been bonding. That's where it's typical.
required.
Everybody's got their bonds,
Yep.
and GM's got their bonds. So just remind me, this is just, I want to get this sheet straightened out. I can't remember, is the pre-con in the GMP or not?
The pre-cons.
No, that's what I thought. Okay, and then, one thing that we have to face, I think, is that there are things not included, like on these sheets, the design fees are not in here. We need to figure those out. We have all the invoices, and we can figure that out. But that's gonna add about another 10%.
Well, so you made this that says insurance fees, bond, and design.
That's in there, yeah.
Is that different?
That's not, no, yes, come on, because completely different. They call it that. It really isn't that. I'm talking about the design that CRA and Casper do. That's not listed here at all.
Right,
So we gotta add that in.
that's right.
And the other thing we gotta do is, I think it's in both GMPs, there's a page listing of things that aren't included.
Yeah, it's called qualifications, clarifications, and assumptions.
Yeah,
That's all gotta be got.
yeah, but we've got budgets, I've got budgets set up in what's called a soft cost, set up to pay our fees, permitting, FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment, all those, I have those allocated out.
Right, but we need to see
Yeah.
that, so we need to add them to these costs, so we start to see the total cost.
Yeah, well, I've got set up budgets, they aren't hard numbers right yet, I'll gladly supply them to you.
If you read the GMP, you'll see a nice listing of all the things which are yet to come, and it's quite a long, like in this case, Crescent City, they went to a cheaper gym floor. And so if the school decides
Well-
they really wanna explain the gym floor, they could put in a wooden gym floor, it would cost more.
But I think it was desired, not just.
You told me that.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't like they were like, oh, it's cheaper. Let's go with that. I think it was actually, preferred.
Multi-purpose.
Yeah.
It was because of the age of the students using it.
Right. Exactly.
So my point is, there's a couple categories missing: design costs and things that have to be done to get a complete school.
Can we?
I can provide those.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me know. I'll let 'em write-
Their
I'll let 'em
budgets, they're
write
not
you
the
the
real
bottom of
costs
the
right
sheet.
now, they're budgets.
Okay.
Well, but a lot of them are costs. So far, there were a lot of costs.
But they aren't, they're just budgets right now, we haven't accrued all the money yet.
I understand, but we have spent probably $2-3 million
Yeah.
per school on design and yeah.
Support.
So since you touched on design, the one question I have that I didn't have a good answer for when people have talked out in the community is why the difference? These are both elementary schools. They're both coming out of the ground. Why are their designs so different? And we've got the explanation on the cost, but I guess because the student stations, you're only 45 student stations. But I guess they say, why isn't there a generic elementary school, and why didn't you go with designs that are more similar? And I didn't have a good answer.
I'll give you twofold. First, the district decided not to do a prototype for both schools. The other is, he touched on the site. The Palatka site is a lot narrower than the Crescent City site. So our school at Crescent City is a finger type plan, and every classroom has got a restroom in it. When you get to Palatka, the site's so narrow, you couldn't spread out and give every classroom a restroom there. The parameters would not allow you to do that. So some of it's that right there.
So the best way to answer that to someone is,
If you would have had a prototype design, it wouldn't have worked on both sides.
Right.
okay,
You would have had to change it anyway.
there you go.
It's
Okay.
the lot size.
It's called
Right.
site-specific design.
Right.
Designs are very much dependent upon the site.
Yes, it'd be the lot shape.
Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Hunter, any more?
No, I'm very interested in the permits, but
Okay.
you brought that up. So.
I'm writing it down for the record. Dr. Hunter has stopped asking questions
Okay.
on this one. Just kidding. So,
It's listening.
on the permit, and I'm not sure where we're gonna go with this, I just wanna bring it up. So, both locations currently aren't zoned correctly. Palatka, just from my opinion, is it just was kind of an oversight 40, 50 years ago when that school's changed. Crescent City is a little different. I know it goes planning committee, Sue. Crescent City itself has to give an opinion, has to be annexed into the county, is that correct?
No.
Other way around?
Vice versa.
Vice versa. And it's not zoned correctly. My first question, being a board or committee member, is who dropped the ball? This was purchased a year ago. We had a real estate agent. We have district folks. We have a school board. We have people that were already under contract to do this. I asked the same question on the at Palatka A on the issue with wetlands, and was never given a good answer. No one took. We asked twice, and they said it wouldn't be an issue, and it was, but no one took responsibility. I don't know whose responsibility it is. Does anybody know whose it would have been to make sure the zoning is correct?
Well, and the bigger question is, since our job is to oversee the dollars, what's the financial impact of that?
That's gonna be the next, but we wouldn't be in the financial impact if, so the other thing, and I've heard this from the community is, and this is something we can propose to the school board if we feel like it, there's a meeting tomorrow, is should there be someone on district staff that's sole responsibility is overseeing these projects? Not a third party and not a current district staff person that may or may not have experience in building schools. So that's the feedback I'm getting from the community. We need to look at that. It's not us, the school board needs to look at it.
But is that a question for us to address?
It's up to y'all if you wanted to talk about it, or we can vote to make that suggestion to the school board, or we can just let it continue
Well-
on.
I'm interested in it if it has a financial impact on the project.
Well, let me go through the financial impact that they're talking about tomorrow that I think would have been avoided if someone, whoever it is, would have had a handle on the zoning at the beginning. So there's 3 scenarios tomorrow. I actually made it back. So this is on the agenda for tomorrow at the school board meeting. Scenario 1 that's recommended by James at Ajax is that the board approves the GMP tomorrow,
Thank you.
and assuming the zoning annexation takes place by August 19th, there's no financial impact to the school district. They would start August 19th. Everything would, I like the wording, would get a jump on submittals, engineering, and nothing would change on the GMP. Scenario 2 is the GMP gets approved tomorrow. Annexation and zoning does not happen by August 19th. and there is a potential exposure of that's basically $900,000. I'm assuming that's costs that have already occurred, or what is that?
I'm glad to explain. So again, the board charged us with, telling them the worst case scenario so again, what we're trying to avoid is scenario 3.
Right, but
yeah.
I'll get to scenario 3.
I'm with you.
What
but-
is the
so-
895?
So sorry, I'll answer you. It's the worst case you would spend for, us working on all this stuff. So we would hire we would engage the subcontractors and write them a subcontract for doing submittals. They would start on that process for the ones that are critical for starting early, and that's the most it could be.
Gotcha.
Really in reality, it would not be that much because, you would wind up not processing some of the submittals, but we wanted to give the worst case.
And then scenario 3 is that the school board does not approve the GMP tomorrow, but annexation still takes place by August 19th and moves forward. There's potential exposure of between $2.7 and $3.6 million to mobilize a month later because of bid increases and also schedule implications. So before we talk about those scenarios, if y'all start on August 19th, is your completion date change?
So we're still targeting the same rough time that we were targeting. I mean, the completion date from the GMP itself would have to be amended and looked at and say, hey, what do we think we can get done here? But I mean, for the most part, any kind of delay is a delay, right? I mean, if you're waiting. Now, that's the whole reason for the idea of getting started on what we can get started on without doing boots on the ground. I also want to make clear in scenario number 2, that 895 is not above the more than the 68, 657, 591 plus 895, 305. It's part of it.
But in scenario 2, that's assuming we don't know when the project starts either, because if it may not ever start.
So you're out, the school board's out $900,000.
Well, more than that, because the architect and everybody's
All
already,
that
and they're already, and they bought the property.
And they bought, you're right.
I just
Like I
know
said,
that I've had a lot of comments in reference, especially when it came out in the newspaper.
Mhm.
People are just a little bit uneasy about the overall projects at this point. So my concern is, how would we address the public?
Well, like I said, this is the first time we've had anything
Right.
financial in front of us before the board's essentially votes on it. So if we want to provide feedback to the board, that's an idea. I don't mind coming, I have to come to the meeting tomorrow anyway for something else. Or if I just wanted y'all to see it since it's out there.
What time is the meeting?
3:30.
What time?
3:30.
3:30.
But we can't influence it at the board. If we want to make
We
something,
can speak.
we should say it now and provide it to the school.
We
Yes,
have
we're
no,
meeting.
we have no control over what Crescent City does to the zoning or annexation.
Correct.
It's not in our purview at all.
Well, if somebody within
Crescent's-
administration
Crescent
is
City's
overseeing,
meeting is 6 p.m. Thursday.
when these meetings takes place,
What do you mean first?
and they might could be speeded up.
Is that their planning
Nothing's
board
gonna
meeting
get
or
sped
planning
up.
commission?
All right.
Zoning for
Nothing will
Crescent
get
City.
sped up.
It's planning and zoning, but not the city commission.
Their planning commission is Thursday.
Yep.
Their first reading of the ordinances would be the second Thursday in July, and their final reading of the ordinances would be the second
Okay.
Thursday of August.
So their planning board meets at night. So if it's the
Planning board
second
meets
Thursday of
Thursday.
August, that's,
That's the 19th, or I'm assuming that's the
Right.
19th. That's
So
why
that
that's
is
August
in
19th date
consideration.
is there. So that's as early as anything boots on the ground could start. Is that
Correct. That's yes.
This is like a momentary switch that you push it and it says, release it and it explodes. Because
that's what you did for a living?
However, but you see, if you do nothing, according to the way I read this, if you approve it and go ahead, it doesn't cost.
Correct.
If you don't approve it and it does not go ahead, it costs a lot. So that says approve it. But then the other one says, if you approve it and it doesn't, and you never get, you're only out 900K plus these other costs. I think we ought to talk about it and figure out what to recommend, or at least to give our insight to it.
Something else to take into consideration, because since it has to go for 2 readings on the council, maybe someone from the school board can have a conversation with their attorney to see if they can call a special call council meeting sooner than that second 30 days, since we're cutting it close.
Somebody's smiling over there. So either he's had the conversation or he knows it can't happen.
I know the attorney real well.
You can't violate sunshine, but if the attorney talks to the
attorneys can
attorney,
talk.
the attorney can memo the
We're
council.
the attorneys.
Right.
Right.
My firm.
They can do a special call council reading for a second reading.
You can, but you have advertising requirements.
Yes.
And you've got multiple balls that are running down the chute. As was mentioned, this track is actually 2 parcels. I'm looking at it as 2 parcels. I'm not talking about from a tax map. I'm talking about from the perspective of that's in the city already and that's not in the city. So there's one portion of this tract, overall tract, is already in the city limits. One portion of this overall tract is in the county. So the 2 tracks that we have, the 2 paths that we have, and the locomotives are on these tracks running simultaneously, is a rezoning and comp plan amendment on the parcel that's in Crescent City, and an annexation rezoning and comp plan amendment on the parcel that's in the county. And you've got advertising requirements on all of the above. And I don't know what their appetite, obviously, it wouldn't be up to the attorney. If the advertising deadlines, the notice deadlines can be met, then it's up to the board as to whether or not they want to have a special call meeting. But the other part of that is, I don't know how much is going to be gained by shortening it by 2 weeks. In other words, my understanding, and somebody can correct me if we're wrong, and you didn't, maybe I should just shut up and let you ask questions. My understanding is that the whole purpose of us approving the GMP, or the board approving the GMP tomorrow, is so that you can lock the subs in.
That is correct. That
My
is,
understanding that the work that you're talking about, the submittal work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is basically so that you can go ahead and engage the subs and lock their prices in, because what I've been advised by y'all is that if we don't lock them in, there's gonna be a pretty good tendency for some of these to jump ship, and you're concerned about what pool of bidders you're gonna get if they do jump ship, for a couple of reasons.
very well said.
So I'm given to understand that the urgency is basically to try to lock the subs in. Because you've got, from what I'm being told, you've got some incremental price increases in materials and other things, but I'm also being told that it's a seller's market out there right now from the perspective of being a sub. And if we have to rebid it, you may not even get the same pool of bidders that you had the first time, because a lot of folks, and I do have experience in this, a lot of folks are gonna say, well, Ajax got it last time, I'm using that as an example. So ABC got it last time, they probably won't get it again, I'm not even gonna bother bidding.
That's correct.
There's a lot involved.
That's the first part of this, right? So it's the GMP, which will happen tomorrow, / if the annexation does not take place by August 19th, that potential exposure cost of $800,000. So by moving it up, if we can.
No, that, it's just by August. August 19th was the
Correct.
date. So if you moved it up to August 1st, I don't think there's any difference in that exposure
No,
cost.
no, okay, August 20th,
Fine.
what happened?
It's fine. Same. I'm telling you, I'm not gonna. Yeah, we're not gonna be like it's the 19th. You know us more than that now. I assure you. I'll never. My whole goal is to get more work with you.
Because that's a lot. I just know if the request went in for special call council for something for the school district that's so important that we're already paying out of our taxes with, why not have this? I think the notice is 10 days. I don't see a reason. This is why it's so important to have relationships and network with our other municipalities and people when things. It's a good example of why it's important. I mean, that's a big risk to not be able to work with them. So for me, I would hope that the ask was there.
I'll just say again, I don't think the risk lies in 2 weeks. I think the risk lies in us August 19th was sort of a drop dead date. We don't get it done by August 19th, we got a problem, as I understood it. You make that date August 1st, I don't think you got any difference. I think.
Well, that's
it's gonna-
because it's before, of course, but what if it's September 1st?
Well,
That's what I'm concerned.
You don't need a special call meeting to have it done by August 19th.
So-
It's gonna get done on the 19th if you follow the regular track. So you said, why don't you have a special call meeting? I'm saying, have a special call meeting and shave off 2 weeks, you hadn't done anything. If it gets past the 19th, that's a different ballgame, but that's not solved by a special call meeting. That's something happened on the 19th.
That means something didn't get approved.
We've got a problem.
So what I'm saying is, when you have a special call meeting, and if they can't move it forward, you still have your normal council meeting, which would have happened by that 19th.
So guys, so the, just,
Or second by the
so if the
Right.
GMP is approved, there's a process of doing the amendment. You have some time there. That first meeting will have taken place and you'll have a pretty good idea, I think, of the first stage of it, I believe.
They had a pretty good idea Thursday night.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, if the GMP is approved, you still have to execute the amendment. It's just because it's signed GMP doesn't mean I'm gonna spend $800,000. That's not how it works.
We've met,
And so-
trust me,
Yeah.
we've met with Crescent City. I had a meeting with Putnam County staff and Crescent City staff a month and a half ago, trying to compare the two alternatives. One of them being do the whole thing in the county, do the whole thing in the city. And there were reasons why doing it in the city was both more logical and had a clearer path. So based upon all of those meetings, we started this process off. As far as a special call meeting, I mean, I don't know that anybody is going to be objecting to that, but we've tried to, Crescent City has a planner who I think is on a consulting basis, not a full-time person. We've tried to basically respect their boundaries as well. And this was the track that I confirmed with them again as of Friday, I guess, that this is the track that they prefer. So can we ask them for a special call meeting? I do. I guess you could, but again, I don't know that you're gonna.
I just say it as a buffer because I have seen it where councils agree on a first reading and then we have a second and then we can't agree. And we can't afford to push this past is where I'm at. But that's just me.
Question for Don. Don, is there not a state requirement for the length of time between the two hearings on rezoning and a comp plan change? Can you do one within 2 weeks of the other one? Or is there a 30-day, you can do them real quick?
Yeah, these are small scales.
Okay.
These are small scale amendments. That was another reason for doing them in two parcels. They're
Okay.
both small scales, and as you know, the small scales require different level of scrutiny at the state levels. The large scales require a whole lot more scrutiny than small scales do. So yes, they can push them all through simultaneously, annexation, but there's a fair amount of work to do from the staff on annexation, rezoning, comp plan change, annexation, or rezoning and comp plan change. So, I think they work with us very well, quite frankly, in moving this along very well. I'm very pleased with the cooperation that we've gotten from the planner and the city manager down there.
I'm a little confused about what and who. The steps that have to happen to get the proper zoning. It appears we have to get the annexation done first.
Simultaneously, it's all running on the same tracks.
All right, and who decides that? What person by name decides that?
Planning Commission at Crescent City will be the first body that renders an
Okay.
opinion. It's advisory in nature.
And what does the county have to do to give it up?
Nothing. Not a thing.
They have no voice.
They'll get notice, but they don't have a thing to do to give it up.
What about the county land? They don't have anything to do with that?
It's not county land. It's in the county, but it's not county land.
Oh, I see.
School district.
It isn't owned by the county. It's in the county jurisdiction, but it's not county land.
So the county has no voice.
They get notification of an annexation, but
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
I've never seen them object to one. Maybe they would someday, but
So my what question is annexation and then and rezoning occurs simultaneously?
they got everything on the same track. So
Why does it have to be annexed in?
Well, because it's
It's not in the city.
Not in the
It's
city.
in the county.
One
No, I
piece in the
understand.
city, one piece county.
Why doesn't the county have a voice in whether it gets annexed or not?
Well, the law says that they don't have to agree to it.
What
Well,
if
why would we want to beg that question?
We don't.
Okay.
I'm just trying to be sure we know who all the who's are.
The who's are Crescent City Planning Commission and Crescent City Commission. And a big factor for me is that in the meeting with the Crescent City planner, who's writing all the staff reports, after us giving a lot of information and having county staff present, from a planning perspective, he has offered the opinion that he believes it's a good location for the school. There are other factors in play that mitigated against us doing it in the county. For one, the county has industrial property adjacent to this. When I said the county has, there is property adjacent to this on the county comprehensive plan, so I don't know the county, that's classified for industrial use. The county has a policy that says you can't put a school next to industrial property. So fighting that battle at the county was gonna be a whole different ballgame.
Right.
Now, having said that, when I had everybody get on the same page at the same time, the county planner said, by the way, that property that's in the industrial comprehensive plan designation really isn't a good industrial site. I doubt we'd ever approve it because it's in a high aquifer recharge area. But many years ago, Olivia may remember it, some of you, others of you who've been around here a long time might remember it, way back when Wes Larson was chamber president, he was bent on getting some property in the county that was industrial site ready. Remember that, Olivia?
Yeah, I remember.
And they picked chunks of property and said, went to the owners and said, you guys okay with us going industrial with this on the comp plan? They did it to Bobby Williams' property on 17 North. They did it on this property. They did it on other property. Without any use in mind, but they wanted some industrial property in the comprehensive plan. My understanding is, in talking to staff and going back further, this was one of those tracts of land. So they picked it, but now the policy that Putnam County has says that you should not have an industrial use in a high aquifer recharge area. So it is on the map as industrial land use designation, but it's at a high aquifer recharge area, making it real, I think, making it very difficult to have put an industrial use there. So for that reason, it would be an impediment in writing from the county's perspective, but they're certainly not going to object from the perspective of the city annexing it and then taking it out of industrial, or taking, I think it's right now agricultural, and putting it into public facilities, which will allow a school. In addition to that, because I've done this work a long time, and I've seen planners kind of waffle some, especially when things kind of get a little tested. So part of the reason for me going down there and meeting with them was for me to look the planner in the eye and say, okay, forget about politics, forget about pressure, forget about who's buying what. Look me in the eye and tell me what you think of this site as a planner for a school location. And he said, I think it's a great one. And he gave me the reasons why. Transportation facilities being Union Avenue, and I guess it's a 308 along there. He believes that the property around this site, which right now is comp plan ag, is going to mitigate towards residential, meaning he thinks neighborhoods around the school that's installed. And then the high aquifer recharge area, making it not compatible for industrial. And presence of potable water and sewer, through centralized services, and and it's not far from what school we already have that's on Union, isn't it?
The high school.
So from a planning perspective, he told me he thought it was a good site for a school, regardless of everything else. And so he was very enthusiastic about it.
So there are two entities in Crescent City who have to agree.
Well, it's
A planning board and the city council?
Planning Commission is recommendation only, they're advisory only. They provide a recommendation to the commission votes.
So once those decisions are made, that's it. The county has already said they're not going to intervene, they're not going to do anything.
And the county's not going to intervene.
They're willing to just let it be annexed.
And
They don't really have a voice.
They really don't.
They don't have a voice.
annexing it into the city will make it go faster.
Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
And it also will avoid the meandering that they were talking about doing before. I mean, they were actually talking about a lot split of our property. So you split out a lot to create an artificial buffer between the school and the industrial, the property that's comped industrial. It was a gerrymandered lot split.
Yeah.
And it looked like you were playing some games. And that just we didn't think, nobody thought that was the way to go. Go ahead and say what you're gonna do, put it out there and go with it. So that was the way to go. And the county, head of the planning department and the chief planner were with me in Crescent City when we met with their planner and their city manager. So,
And they can speak for the county. If they think it's a good idea, they say it, that means the county's okay with it.
they can talk about the land use. I mean, obviously,
yeah.
they aren't the county commission.
No, I know.
You have to keep, the county's not losing any tax revenue, this is
No,
going, so it's not like there's no money, right, there's no money.
No, I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about too many people in the decision process, which evidently just the planning board in Crescent City and the Crescent City Council.
And you've got the staff already on board. I mean, and that's not something anybody won them over on. I'm not saying anybody exerted any great influence. I think it's legitimately a good planning decision.
But all they do is make a recommendation, so let's not get all hung up on this, they like it, it's going good. All they do is make a recommendation to council. It's up to that council for it to majority vote if this is happening. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't want people in the audience and people that are listening that don't understand the process, the people you met with, all they are giving are recommendations. It doesn't matter what the staff likes. They're just simply recommending this to the council.
Staff report is competent and substantial evidence.
Planning board to the council, but the council makes a decision.
Council's gonna vote on it.
So I don't agree that the staff's opinion, it doesn't matter. And I've only done this about 38 years, but you may know something I don't about it. From my perspective, the staff report is very important because the standard of review in Florida is whether or not there's competent and substantial evidence to support the decision made by the city commission or county commission. The staff report in and of itself is competent and substantial evidence by itself. So unless somebody comes into that planning commission or that city commission with competent and substantial evidence to countervene what the staff's recommending, it is a big deal. Now, of course, we don't want to get into the appellate context, but I'm just saying, when you do what we're doing, you have to at some point make a risk assessment. And that risk assessment in what I do is based upon a question or a thought about whether people are going to follow what is the applicable law, and then I have to count on people following it. If you look at Crescent City's comp plan, Crescent City's text of their comp plan, and the applicable laws, with the staff saying yes, 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 we find consistency with all of the policies of the comp plan, it is a big deal. It's a big deal.
And I might add this, in all the years I've been involved with the Palatka City Commission and followed local politics, and that's been since 1987, there's very rarely ever a time when a city commission disagrees with their board. 99.9% of the time, if the board recommends it, they're going to go with it. Very rarely do they turn it down, very rarely. And again, it's usually a legal reason that causes it. I don't see any legal reason here that would cause anything, so I think that there's no reason to worry about that.
And you're right, though, you can't guarantee it. As of Friday, I contacted the planner and the city manager again, the city manager, who was with the mayor at the time, and I said, okay, tell me if anything has changed on your horizon. Have you heard of any group marshaling to oppose it? Has anybody raised an issue
That's
that
what
they think?
worries me.
Have you?
Right there, what you just said. The group that doesn't want something, if there's so much contention in Crescent City right now. You say don't bring politics in it. That's why, for me, having that special call meeting, because people are going to approach council. We don't like this anyway, right? All the research and all the facts and the evidence to say why it's good, environmental, everything is good. But
a special call meeting won't make any difference. If you got a group opposed it,
What
if
if
you have the meeting a day after the first meeting, you're going to have the same group opposing.
a special call meeting makes a difference because you have your first reading, you have a special call meeting, and at that special call meeting, if they can't make a decision, they have the regularly scheduled council meeting, and hopefully by then that they will be able to make a decision.
If they don't make a decision, then it dies from a tie vote. I don't think it can come back at the next meeting. Am I wrong, Don? If they have a special meeting and it dies on a tie vote, can they bring it again back to the city commission meeting at the next meeting? I don't think so.
There's 5 city commissioners, right? So unless somebody doesn't show up, it'll probably not be a tie vote.
And another point to make is the planning commission is one Thursday, right?
Right.
So if the planning commission says they're good with it, I mean, that's the first hurdle. And I think
And that's good.
And what
You
is the
feel good
date of
about
that?
that's
fine.
Thursday, this week.
Thursday.
And then the city commission is the following week, or no, July.
Second Thursday in July, second Thursday in August is the normal meeting schedule of this, of the city commission. So planning commission this week, and then they go from there. They have already advertised. I know from planning commission, I don't know if they've done any advertisements for, city commission. I doubt it, quite frankly.
So do we want to make a recommendation?
So, well, I was gonna say, to bring us back to the recommendation on the GMP, and I don't remember exactly who said it, but scenario 1 and 2, yes, there's risk with number 2, but scenario 3, I don't see how in the world we could recommend the school board doing that. GMP, we've just reviewed in great detail. I don't think any of us have an issue with that part. And the GMP being approved tomorrow, 1 and 2 are still, we don't know, we can't say choose 1 or 2. 1 or 2 is gonna happen.
Right.
Should we take a recommendation to the board tomorrow
We can,
on the GMP?
we can.
We haven't historically.
Pardon?
You talking about the decision on the GMP or the GMP itself?
The recommended for them to approve it.
Oh, yeah, we can do
Yeah, I mean, I think that should come from us.
Like I said, it's the first time we've seen anything financial ahead of time, so
that. That's right.
we can take advantage of that and at least publicly, everyone will know we looked at it.
Something to-
1 and 2 is
That
acting
might
versus
encourage
not.
them to go ahead and
No,
approve it.
The difference between 1 and 2 is whether the annexation and zoning takes place. It has nothing to do with us or the school board.
Yeah, but in scenario 2, you pay $900,000, but you miss your 8/19 kickoff.
But that has nothing to do with the school board or approving the GMP. The only action item is whether they approve the
yes,
GMP.
That's exactly right, yeah, I agree. But in terms of risk benefit, it's a $900,000 risk against a possible cost of 2.7.
Correct.
The way this is stated.
Or
That's
3.6.
right.
Or 3.6, could be 3.
So
Right.
do we want to, like I said, I have to go to the meeting tomorrow anyway. I'll be glad to make that recommendation if y'all want to make a motion
Which one?
So do we
to
approve
approve the GMP. That's the only thing they can do.
I think that would be good, because I think if they feel like we've reviewed it and we've looked over it, they may feel, they might feel better with going with the decision. Because I was at the meeting at the last one, and it was just like brand new information, and I think they felt really uneasy about it. But knowing that we have, as a board, especially Dr. Hunter, reviewed it, I think they would feel a little more confident in approving it.
The kind of the GMP, I think, is fine. And that's what we would say to them. But whether to approve it on that date is really the question. And it sounds like we're wanting to say approve it now.
From a financial point of view, again,
Yeah.
Right.
that's our job.
Oh, yeah, from a
Right.
financial standpoint, yeah.
Risk management.
Correct.
Yes.
I'll make a motion
Okay.
to the school board that we, as a board, have looked at the GMP, and we are making the recommendation that they move forward and approve Ajax contract for the GMP.
Sounds
Motion, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Or pretty much the same, Yvette or Lever, either one. Second, any other discussion?
I would change the word board to committee. We're not a board, we're a
Oh,
committee.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Got that, Miss Alice? All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can we move back to your question?
You guys need me for anything else?
You're waiting for this moment. huh?
I'm gonna sit down, but I'm gonna stay if you need me.
Rest your
Got
back.
you.
Yes, sir.
You raised an important question, and the question was, how did this happen?
Correct.
And the question is, how do we avoid it in the future? And I think it merits some thought about having someone who looks over these things and understands the general characteristics. Now, I mistakenly assume, and I think both Ashley and Ajax would now agree, I thought that was part of their job. If you hire a construction manager, they should be looking at all the, when they briefed us, they said, you know, we're gonna help smooth everything out. But I don't think that's a fair responsibility to lay on them. But that is one model, that you essentially take the construction manager and move them over to the owner's side and have them make help you decide what the pitfalls are. That's a model.
Mr. Chair, could I ask for a 5-minute recess? So I want to talk to my staff and just to be able to come back and answer some questions.
I'm good with
Is
that.
that okay?
Get it right.
Take a bathroom break or a food break?
Food break.
Food break.
Reconvene in 5 minutes.
Carol, is it approved?
All right, we'll call the meeting back to order. We were at Dr. Hunter asked,
I'm simply saying, you raised a good question. That is, do we have any comment about the foresight moving ahead with these projects and the county and the school board's ability to keep up with all the things that are happening without a focused person to deal with it? You raised that question.
yeah. Was that part of the recess that we took?
Yeah.
Do you want to address it?
Attorney Holmes, if he would just address that.
Okay.
If he got what the question was.
So I have an advantage in that I wasn't here when this all started.
That was right there, disclaimer, by the way. Sorry.
I started to sound like a car dealer.
Oh, ouch.
Woo, getting hot in here.
He didn't sound like a lawyer.
So I think that we all agree that it would be foolish for us to say that there wasn't an issue that was overlooked, missed, whatever you want to call it. By whom? I certainly don't know. What I will say is this, normally when a landowner, let's just say a landowner, not a school board, moves forward with a development project, and I've represented a number of them on some big projects, they trust the people that are working for them to check the boxes. They don't go behind me and go check zoning or go behind me and go check water management permits or whatever. They hire me, they hire an engineer, and they say, you know, make this happen. So in that process of whose responsibility it was, I really don't know at this point, but I think that there will be a generous amount of consideration of the process after this is over. I know there will be. And in terms of trying to make sure that the areas that were, the division of responsibility is clarified. I mean, we've all been in projects where you've got people involved in different areas of expertise. One thinks one's checking something, one thinks another, that the other one's checking it. And something as fundamental as if the property properly zoned is overlooked. So, and I had the question too when I came on board was, you know, when we talked about the PSAC, remember or PSAC, I guess it is, well, the question was, well, is the zoning right for everything? And the thought was, yeah, it is. And then when we checked it in specifically, it wasn't. Now the school on Horseman's Club, if there had been a school there, it was comp planned for a school. But the zoning was never made to match it, which, you know, I understand people assuming that. I don't know about Crescent City, but we've had a lot of conversations about it. And I think there's gonna be a different process for the future about these kinds of things. And as far as whether they should hire an in-house person, I mean, that's really that's above my pay grade as to whether they should hire an in-house person to oversee everything. I just don't know.
Well, I'm not concerned about who's blame. I think that's behind us now. The question is, how do we go forward?
Yeah. And it's a good question. I mean, you know, I guess.
There's one for the school.
Yeah. I think there'll be quite a bit more discussion about that too, in public.
What's that mean?
See, I think that question is being, I think there are a lot
Talk in
of
private.
people who have the same question, and some of them on the school board.
The school board will need to address it. I mean,
And I don't think again, I agree with you completely, not from the standpoint of placing blame, but how do we make sure that something similar but different doesn't happen before the projects are finished?
Absolutely.
Right?
and at the end of the day, the school board will have to answer the public's questions, and that's part of what we're here to do, is to ask those questions now.
Right.
My only concern with it is we're at least 3 months delayed from where we want to be. And if we don't open them on August of 2025, that's when we're really going to hear about it. So trying to get ahead of it.
Well, we know we won't.
Nah,
It's a 16-month project.
James didn't quite,
He didn't say that, but
What, say it again?
the timeline on
opening in
finishing.
August of 2020.
I mean, you know, it's not what the GMP shows right now.
That's correct.
So, I mean, I'm not gonna promise you that right this minute, but, you know, the 2025, 2026 year is what we're targeting. We're gonna do it as fast as we possibly can.
We definitely want a good build.
I don't wanna promise you
Right.
something that can't be done, you know, ever. So,
Right. Okay. All good with that?
So,
Yes, sir.
well, talk about
Yeah,
you're
go ahead.
going tomorrow night at the school board and speaking on behalf of the committee. And again, I just want to emphasize you're speaking, and they understand you're speaking from a financial point of view.
And the risk.
On the risk,
Yep.
okay.
I'm going to jump, agenda item number 1, you had stepped out. Mr. Holmes, I almost called you doctor, we have a Juris Doctorate. Is there anything on the tax collector, or you mentioned interlocal agreement? I think the interlocal agreement has been solved. There was a couple of meetings, so it's kind of catching back up, so to speak.
Yeah,
Totally.
it's kind of, this job that the interlocal or the PSAC, Public School Advisory Committee, was supposed to do basically is, we're kind of past that element where, as it was designed, when the school board selected a site, if they chose that alternative, you know, there were two. One, they could just ask the PSAC to come up with some sites, or two, they could select a site, then give it to the PSAC, whose job it would be to verify zoning, et cetera. Well, that's kind of passed. So at this point, I think that the interlocal agreement probably has some aspects of it that need to be tweaked, but in terms of the immediacy of the issues, I think we've all shifted over to, here's where we are. I mean, how we got here is one thing, but here's where we are. How do we go forward without, in the most efficient way
But
possible?
it could be important for the next
Absolutely.
round of school
I agree
builds
with
and
you.
renovations.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it'll be in place at that point where we think, well, it'll work.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yep, I believe so. I mean, yeah, we're gonna definitely try. It won't be over, it won't be, we all know it's there now.
Right.
Okay, we all know it's there. So,
Any update on the tax collector issue?
I do not believe there is a body of opinion out there that is persuasive on either side. I think everybody agrees she can charge it. Shouldn't say she, tax collector can charge it. The question is, does she have to charge it?
That's right.
I have sounded school board attorneys, I have sounded staff in different agencies, and it's a pretty, I guess you'd say, interesting issue, and that's what everybody tells me. That's interesting.
They don't want to touch it.
Can you give me any help, any insight? And I don't know of anything that would give you a definitive answer other than an AG's opinion. I mean, obviously a lawsuit, but nobody wants to jump into that ballgame. I mean, I think we're all in the context of, I don't think there's an adversarial posture here. It's just a matter of, if she can do it, then the question will be for her to answer, will she do it? But in the meantime, I don't think it's adversarial from our perspective. We just like to know. So I'll be talking to staff and see if they want to seek that opinion. I mean, it might even be something we could do jointly from the perspective of She may say, I wanna know too.
Have a clear
She may
answer.
say that, I
And-
wanna know too.
In getting an AG's opinion, I think you talked about it last time, you have to request it. And it's gotta be something that they want to even give you an opinion on. Is that,
Now you have to request it, and you have to actually you have to basically brief the question. And it isn't so much, it isn't just as simply as saying, hey, what do you think? You gotta actually brief it and give them what amounts to a legal position, and then they look at it and say, if they want to take it, they don't have to, as you know, then they look at it and say, we'll take it, and they'll use, hopefully they'll start with your research as a starting point, and then go from there.
and we'll leave that up to.
Jackie.
Just thinking, couldn't the school board members, possibly write an official letter to the tax collector's office requesting, the tax collector's office to forfeit the collection and do it some kind of an official letter and then get an official response back instead of spending all this money on legal fees, no offense, but I mean, going to the Attorney General's office, that's just gonna be even more legal
First
fees.
of all, just to answer that office has been vacated, and there are 3 people running for that office, so I'm guessing whoever wins that election would probably make that decision.
And we did, and you're right, it wasn't in writing, but Ms. Myers did appear at was that an official meeting or a workshop?
It was here.
She appeared here.
Okay, well, then you may recall, she was asked a specific question, if you can, will you? And
And she said no. She said you wouldn't answer, which is.
I'm not blaming anybody, I'm not trying to throw rocks at anybody, I'm just saying it was asked. I
Yeah, it
mean,
was.
But in hypothetically, whoever the new tax collector is, decides they don't want to take it, then we don't even know if they have the legal authority to do that. And that's up to them to decide or figure out.
And the one opinion I found, which Ms. Myers' office has indicated only applies to offices that are fee-based, not offices, or excuse me, offices that receive a appropriation from the county commission, not offices that are fee-based. And one opinion said it would be done, the county commission could opt to not to charge the fee with the concurrence of the tax collector. And that's the only AG opinion I found on point.
And that was from the 70s, right?
It was.
Yes, Dr. Hunter?
This is one of those questions to me that, what happened to public comments, well, why didn't we see this coming? I'm not concerned about that either. It's a very reasonable thing. It's 1% of the collected fee. It does amount to whatever 1% of $6.5 million every year. So it does add up over a while, but it is still 1% of
First 50.
3% the first.
Yeah, $50 million of appraisal, not $50 million of money, of the appraised value, and that's almost nothing. The county's worth about $6 billion. So the $50 million is irrelevant. That's why Rhonda claimed properly that it should be 1%, not what we're being paid. So the switch between 3 and 1 is on appraised value.
3 and 2.
I thought it was 3-2.
3 to 2? What? It's not 1, it's 2 then.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 to 2, excuse me. Yeah.
So at least got that part figured out. Because we did get a refund.
That's the difference. Everybody shares in the refund, but not everybody.
No, I
shares.
mean, we got a refund already.
We got
because
that, yeah, definitely.
We were overcharged.
But I don't know if we should be working this issue any further.
Well, especially since there's, until the new tax collector's in office, I don't think it's anything we can even touch. All right, now, so in your packet, there are 2 financial documents. One is April, one is May. The dates are in the very bottom right. I did talk or email with Jonathan today. Now, he was out, sickness.
They're actually on, Jonathan and Rhonda.
Well, they've been awfully quiet.
They said they can hear us.
Okay. Well, that's
Yes, we can hear.
Both of y'all available?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I did have,
Jonathan went out to dinner with Bob Gang and our financial advisor and our investment advisor and a whole group of sponsors. So I told him to go on and I would stay here and be on the call.
Okay, you can ask the attorney,
Thank you, Roger.
Bob, for a refund. So I emailed with Jonathan today. He is working on another report that I asked for, which was breaking down the expenses by school.
Right.
Because it's kind of hard to follow, and I know he's been out sick or had something. He'll get that to us hopefully by the next meeting, so it's a little bit easier to follow. I did.
Yeah, he
have-
had a procedure done, so I just continued on the way I had done them before. I completed the April and the May one.
Okay. I did have a question I've got to find. Greg, I guess, I'll try,
Yeah, that's
or I
pretty
don't know if you, it's
Here, let me get you.
add-on services. That's how we,
Additional service?
yeah, I don't know if it's a question for Rhonda or for you. There's a couple of them. There's one for 169,000, one for 3,800. Does anybody know what that is?
I don't, unless you told me who it was to, I could probably.
It's
answer.
to CRA.
Okay, then that would be for,
There you go.
soil boring, different additional services that we anticipated we might have them, so we included that as additional.
Would that, so is that part of the already the GMP or is
No,
that?
that's outside the GMB, that's part of the
That's-
soft cost we were talking about.
So that's what y'all were talking about earlier?
Yeah,
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
So those we need to kind of keep an eye on. Yes, Dr. Hunter?
I just had two questions. Ajax has been doing some work prior to the GMP. It's not in the pre-con. What is that? What do you mean? According to November 23rd, Ajax Company was paid $28,600 for.
Pre-construction, that's the only thing we.
No, it's not pre-con. It doesn't say pre-con.
You have a copy of the invoice by chance?
Oh, no, I don't. This is Jonathan's
And
report.
it says construction management, Crescent City schematics.
Schematics. Is that pre-con?
That was
That
the
would
schematic estimate.
that would be the schematic, the estimate report for during pre-construction.
But that's not out of the pre-con. What is that?
We don't have any dollars under contract except the pre-con fee.
That's what I thought. That was the question. I thought. So it is the pre-con.
Correct.
Yeah, that's fine. And then when we had this, this question really for Jonathan or Ron, but we had the Owsley refund because of the cost difference on all that. Is that reflecting these numbers that yet to come? The $29,000.
Rhonda, did you hear that?
I heard it. I have not seen any type of refund check come in, and I'm not sure if they're deducting it from one of their future payments, but I didn't notice that through the end of May.
I assumed that it was deducted from a.
It was deducted from the previous.
Yeah.
Chief.
That's what I
The
said.
previous payment.
Yes.
Yes, so it's been accounted
That's
for.
what I
It was
thought.
all written out.
Yeah.
Perfect. I'll go back and when I go into the system, I just see what the accounts payable people have put in as the description and use that. Otherwise I can go, what, do you know if it was on the April 2024 $424,000 one? It may have been taken off of that application number one. I can go and verify for the group.
I believe it was on application 2.
Application two, okay.
I would assume the answer is yes.
That's
Okay, yeah, I'll make a note to go and look at that.
If you read these, Oxley used all their pre-con. And Ajax has some yet to go.
Yes, we have not billed for the 100% pays yet.
Pre-con lets them spend money before they really get rolling.
Right.
Pre-con, did I say pre-con? It's pre-construction.
Right.
Right.
I knew what you were saying that time. Some of this other stuff I had to write down to make sure I study more. Any other questions on financials? I think it will be nice when we get them separated by school
Yeah.
and all of the totals.
I thought you asked for that.
Yeah, it's just Jonathan
Yeah.
was out sick, so.
I just have to say one thing, before we do the next bond, I sure want to understand what Bob Gang is doing for $109,000.
I've had the
But
same question.
But we don't need to do that tonight.
No, Jonathan's with him right now. You could ask him.
I hope he's paying for dinner.
Better be.
Paying for dinner.
There's a pretty
$1,000. That's what I need to do the general
in different
council.
An explanation, not just a bill. And I never, when I had lawyers, I always ask them, what are you billing me for? Is it hours? And I'm just,
I'm gonna be the next bond counsel.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm putting my name in the hat.
I'll be your assistant.
And you can be a low bidder and still be okay.
So,
Any other questions or comments on financials?
Nope.
All right, we're down to any other committee comments or reports that anyone would like to.
You saw my vision. I'm in.
We appreciate it. Schedule the next meeting.
Yep.
I talked with Ashley earlier, probably makes no sense to meet in July. August 19th is a pretty important date, looking at, we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
August 20th is pretty important too.
Yeah.
No, not that day.
That's what I hear.
So,
Would you say what is our schedule meeting tonight?
no, I would say after Election Day would probably be appropriate.
Uh-huh.
Just to have that, all that nonsense out of our way. Not, I'm just saying.
Not that it's nonsense, we know.
Distraction.
You looking at
Want it August, we want to move to September?
Let's do September.
I think having it right after the August rezoning stuff would probably be a good idea.
That's what I'm thinking. We
So-
right on top of it.
Wednesday is the 22nd.
22nd.
The 21st. The 21st is what we.
So if we went
Day
back
after
to,
the election?
Yeah, then don't.
The 21st will be the day before the second reading to the city commission of Crescent City.
Say it again.
The 21st is the second, is the day before the city commission of Crescent City meets for the second time to approve or disapprove the, zoning.
is that right?
They make the second and fourth Thursdays, and the 22nd is the fourth Thursday. And that's on Thursday.
I thought it was the second.
28th, we took back a week.
We could synchronize calendars.
Yeah, that's what it told me.
Because August 1st is a Thursday,
Yes.
so it makes the 22nd the.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 8th and the 22nd is when the city commission meets. So I think the 28th
28th?
would probably be a
28th?
following Tuesday or.
28 sounds good.
The 28th, that's a Wednesday.
Yeah, go back to Wednesday.
Go back to
Yeah.
Wednesday, make it the 28th.
So 8:20.
August, it looks to me like August 8th is the second Thursday in August unless I'm missing something.
It is, and that's the
It
first
is.
reading, and then the second reading's not till 2 weeks later on the 22nd.
First readings in July.
It's in
Oh, the first
July.
reading in July, okay.
Right, July 11th.
Okay.
Mhm.
So where
July
how
the
did you
11th
come
is
up
the
with the
first reading.
19th?
See, we got a special meeting in there for you.
Where does that date go?
Yeah, the first reading's in
That's the
July.
magic date, whether or not they approve
How I
it.
came up with the 19th was, I think I went to the, was the 15th, which is past the 8th, and then I added the next Monday.
Okay.
So it's not
That's what has us messed up.
you don't expect
It's
it
not
to
a
be
scientific.
It's not a real,
I expected the 19th to have been the day after the meeting, so that's why.
So we're looking at the 28th?
See what
Mr.
you've
Chairman,
done?
would you tell us
So where
what-
we're
All
at.
right, August 28th, Wednesday, 6 o'clock will be our next meeting.
I'm sorry.
Sounds good.
Yes, you can send out
Yeah, we got it.
All right,
August 28th.
any other business? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
If you
Third.
agree, stand up and leave.